Let's get right into it. You probably think of the CIA and you imagine spies in slick suits, laser watches, and maybe a car that turns into a submarine. And sure, maybe some of that exists. But the truly unsettling stuff, the things that keep military strategists and psychologists up at night, isn't about gadgets. It's about the vulnerabilities baked directly into your brain's source code. When the agency declassified troves of documents, like its infamous KUBARK counterintelligence interrogation manual from the 1960s, they gave us a peek behind the curtain. And what we found wasn't a manual for breaking bones, but a masterclass in breaking minds. They studied the glitches in human psychology, the cognitive backdoors we all have, and they wrote down the user manual. So today, we're counting down the most disturbing psychological tricks hidden in plain sight within those declassified CIA documents. Imagine being tasked with creating the ultimate interrogation technique. Your mind probably goes to Hollywood extremes, bright lights, loud noises, maybe even some questionable pharmaceuticals. But what if the most devastatingly effective method the CIA ever documented was absolutely nothing? It sounds like a joke, but the agency poured immense resources into studying the art of doing nothing so intensely it could unravel a human mind. This is the world of sensory deprivation. The KUBARK manual dedicates a significant portion to what it calls non-coercive methods, which is a beautifully sanitized term for messing with someone's head without leaving a mark. The core principle is simple. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. It's constantly taking in data, sights, sounds, feelings, temperatures. It needs this stream of information to maintain its sense of self, its sense of reality. So what happens when you turn off the fire hose? In experiments conducted at universities like McGill in the 1950s, funded under CIA front organizations, researchers paid students to just lie down. That was it. They were put in small, soundproofed rooms, wearing goggles that blocked all light and cuffs that muffled their sense of touch. For the first few hours, it was probably relaxing, a nice break from classes. But then the brain's desperation kicks in. Starved of input, it starts to eat itself. Participants began to experience intense hallucinations. They'd see processions of squirrels marching across their vision or hear music that wasn't there. Their ability to think logically crumbled. Their sense of time evaporated. They became intensely paranoid. After just a day or two, many were unable to perform simple cognitive tasks and begged to quit. The CIA documented this with chillingly sterile curiosity. They realized that a mind in this state is a mind that's wide open. Stripped of its external reality, the brain becomes incredibly suggestible. The first person to speak to you after hours of silence holds an immense amount of power. Their voice becomes your reality. The manual notes that this state can induce intense feelings of disorientation and anxiety, making a person desperate to cling to any human interaction offered, even if it's from their interrogator. The ultimate weapon wasn't a complex machine. It was an empty, quiet room. It's a terrifying testament to the fact that your own mind, left alone, can become your greatest enemy. There's a deeply uncomfortable feeling you get when you're caught in a lie. It's that hot, prickly sensation in your gut, the sudden urge to either confess everything or, more likely, double down and build the lie even bigger. We've all been there. It's the moment you tell your boss you're almost done with a report you haven't even started. Now you have to actually do it, all because you wanted to avoid a moment of disapproval. This isn't just social awkwardness. It's a fundamental glitch in our mental wiring known as cognitive dissonance, and the CIA's interrogation manual shows exactly how to weaponize it. The concept was pioneered by psychologist Leon Festinger, who argued that humans have a deep-seated need for our internal narratives to be consistent. We can't comfortably hold two contradictory beliefs at the same time. For example, belief number 1, I am a good, honest person. Belief number 2, I just knowingly lied to someone. The mental friction this creates is the dissonance, and our brain will do almost anything to resolve it. The CIA figured out you could create this friction on purpose. The KUBARK manual describes a technique that doesn't start by asking for nuclear launch codes. It starts with something small, almost trivial. An interrogator might pressure a subject to admit to a minor, insignificant infraction. Just admit you once took office supplies home for your kids. It's not a big deal. Everyone does it. Just say it and we can move on. The subject, wanting the pressure to stop, might agree. Fine, yes, I took a stapler home once. Boom, the hook is in. Now the subject's brain is in conflict. I am a loyal soldier, is now at odds with, "I just admitted to being a petty thief." To the interrogator, the stapler doesn't matter. What matters is the psychological event that just occurred. To resolve the dissonance, the subject's brain will often take the path of least resistance. It starts to rationalize. Well, maybe I'm not as perfectly loyal as I thought. Taking that stapler was a bit dishonest. The interrogator has successfully planted the seed of a new self-perception. From there, it's just a matter of escalation. The next suggestion is a little bigger, and the next bigger still. Each time the subject agrees to a slightly more significant falsehood, their brain works overtime to justify it, rewriting their own self-image to align with their actions. Before they know it, they've gone from admitting to stealing a stapler to collaborating in a way they never thought possible. It's a psychological judo throw. The interrogator isn't using their own force. They're using the subject's own mental machinery against them, making their brain their own worst enemy in the room. There's a famous psychology experiment that is both hilarious and deeply troubling. In the 1950s, Solomon Asch brought a group of people into a room and showed them two cards. One had a single line on it, the other had 3 lines of varying lengths. The task was simple. Say which of the 3 lines matches the first card. Easy, right? Except Asch put only one real participant in a room full of actors who were instructed to unanimously give the wrong answer. After hearing person after person confidently declare that the short line was the correct match, the real subject would start to squirm, their brow would furrow. You could see the gears in their brain grinding as they battled two realities, what their own eyes were telling them and what the entire group was insisting was true. A staggering 75% of participants caved to the group pressure at least once, agreeing with a patently false answer. This isn't a sign of weakness. It's a demonstration of the Asch conformity principle. Our brains are ancient machines built for tribal survival, and for our ancestors, being ostracized from the group was a death sentence. So we evolved a powerful, almost painful aversion to being the lone dissenter. It feels physically uncomfortable to stand against the tribe. The CIA understood this tribal instinct perfectly. They knew you don't need to directly pressure a person if you can just get the people around them to do it for you. Enter the false flag or friendly comrade technique. An interrogator would place their target in a holding cell not alone, but with a few other prisoners. These other prisoners were, of course, agents or collaborators. They wouldn't act like guards. They would act like allies. They'd complain about the conditions, curse the guards, and gain the target's trust. Then one by one, they would start to break. One might say, you know what, maybe the interrogator has a point about the government's foreign policy. Another might confess to a minor act of rebellion. Suddenly, our target is back in the Asch experiment. Their own conviction, "I will not cooperate," is now in direct opposition to the emerging consensus of their peers. The people they thought were their allies are now conforming to a new narrative. The pressure to go along with the flow becomes immense. To resist is to be isolated all over again, but this time from the very people they trusted. It's a brilliantly devious tactic because it outsources the interrogation. The guards can almost sit back and watch as the target's own primal need for social conformity does the heavy lifting for them. Let's say you're in a windowless room, being questioned by someone whose entire job is to make your life miserable. For hours, they are relentless, aggressive, maybe even insulting. And then they stop. They lean back, sigh, and slide a cup of lukewarm coffee across the table. "Look," they say, "let's just take a break." In that moment, after hours of hostility, that simple gesture feels monumental. It's a flicker of humanity, a tiny act of kindness. And it's also the most dangerous thing that has happened to you all day. This is the reciprocity trap, and it's one of the most powerful tools of social psychology. Humans are fundamentally wired with a desire to repay debts. It's the bedrock of cooperation. If I share my food with you today, you'll feel an obligation to share yours with me tomorrow. Charities exploit this by sending you free address labels in the mail. You didn't ask for them, but now you feel a tiny, nagging sense of obligation to send a donation back. The KUBARK manual frames this not as kindness, but as a calculated transaction. The interrogator who gives you that coffee isn't trying to be your friend. They are creating a psychological debt. The manual talks at length about the debility, dependency, and dread that isolation and pressure can induce. A person in that state is desperate for any positive human connection. By providing a small comfort, the interrogator transforms from an adversary into a giver. And now the subject's brain is screaming at them to return the favor. This subconscious pull is incredibly hard to resist, So when the interrogator follows up their act of kindness with a question, it's no longer just a question. It's a request to settle a debt. Come on, just tell me where the meeting was. It's a small detail. Help me out here. The subject feels a powerful urge to reciprocate. Giving up one small piece of information seems like a fair trade for the moment of relief and humanity they were just shown. But of course, it's never just one piece of information. That free cup of coffee is simply the down payment. Its true cost is your integrity, paid in installments. What is the one thing that governs your entire life, that you absolutely depend on, but that you can't see, touch, or hold? It dictates when you eat, when you sleep, when you work. It's the invisible scaffolding that keeps your reality from collapsing into a chaotic mess. It's time. And if you want to truly disorient a human being, you don't take away their freedom or their comfort, you just steal the clock. This isn't about simply taking away a person's watch. The CIA's manuals discuss the deliberate tactic of obliterating a subject's sense of temporal awareness. Imagine being held in a room with no windows. The lights are on, constantly. Or maybe they're switched on and off at completely random intervals that have no relationship to day or night. Meals arrive not at breakfast, lunch, and dinner time, but at what might be 3 a.m., then 11 a.m., then 4 p.m., then 4:30 p.m. There are no patterns, no clues. No way to know if you've been there for 12 hours or so too. This is called temporal disorientation, and it's a direct assault on your brain's most fundamental programming, the circadian rhythm. Your body has an internal clock that's been fine-tuned by millions of years of evolution to sync with the rising and setting of the sun. It regulates everything from your hormone levels to your body temperature to your sleep cycles. When you destroy a person's ability to perceive time, you sever that connection. Their internal clock goes haywire. This induces a state of profound psychological distress. Without the ability to anticipate what comes next, the brain is thrown into a state of helpless confusion and anxiety. The KUBARK manual calls this disrupting routines. It's a key part of making a subject feel dependent. In the chaotic void where time has ceased to exist, the interrogator becomes the only source of structure. They are the clock. They are the sun. They decide when it's day, lights on, questioning, and when it's night, lights off, maybe sleep. By stealing time itself, they make themselves the god of their captive's tiny, confusing universe. And a person will do almost anything to bring back the simple, comforting predictability of a sunrise. Why are slot machines in Las Vegas so ridiculously addictive? It's not because you win. In fact, you almost always lose. The addiction isn't built on the reward. It's built on the possibility of the reward. That what if this time is one of the most powerful psychological hooks ever discovered. This is the principle of a variable ratio reinforcement schedule, and it's the same mechanism that keeps you compulsively checking your phone for notifications. Well, the CIA figured out you can apply the logic of a slot machine to a human soul. Instead of being constantly cruel or consistently kind, an interrogator using this principle would become radically unpredictable. One session, they might be hostile, yelling, and accusatory. The next, they might walk in, offer a warm meal, and talk casually about sports. Then the next time, they're hostile again. They might promise a reward for cooperation, a book, a blanket, a letter from home, but only deliver on that promise randomly. Sometimes you cooperate and get nothing. Other times you cooperate and get the reward. There is no discernible pattern. This isn't just a mood swing, it's a meticulously crafted strategy. This randomness puts the subject's brain into an excruciating state of anxious hope. They can't adapt. They can't settle into a reality of either constant punishment or predictable kindness. Their mind becomes obsessed with trying to solve the puzzle. What did I do to make him nice today? Was it the way I answered that question? If I do it again, will I get that reward? They become hyper-focused on the interrogator, desperately trying to find the sequence of actions that will make the slot machine pay out the jackpot of human decency. The subject is no longer just a prisoner. They are now an active participant in their own interrogation, constantly modifying their behavior in the desperate hope of finding the winning formula. It's a brilliant way to foster compliance without constant overt force. The interrogator weaponizes the most human emotion of all, hope, turning it into a lever to control their subject's every action. In 1971, a psychologist named Philip Zimbardo conducted one of the most infamous experiments in history. He took a bunch of perfectly normal, mentally healthy college students, flipped a coin, and designated half of them prisoners and the other half guards. He then stuck them in a mock prison in the basement of Stanford University. What happened next was terrifying. The guards, given a uniform and a title, became sadistic and authoritarian. The prisoners, stripped of their names and given numbers, became passive, helpless, and emotionally broken. The experiment, meant to last 2 weeks, had to be shut down after just 6 days because people were losing their minds. This is the horrifying power of the labeling theory. It proves that our identities are far more fragile than we think. If an authority figure assigns you a label and puts you in a situation that reinforces that label, you will often subconsciously start to become it. The CIA didn't need a university basement to understand this principle. It's a cornerstone of psychological manipulation. Their manuals outline how to do this deliberately. An interrogator doesn't just accuse a subject of being a spy. They treat them like one, but with a twist. They might say things like, "Let's be honest, you're not cut out for this field work. You're an academic, a thinker. You're too smart to take the fall for these grunts." Or conversely, "You're a coward. You've always looked for the easy way out, haven't you? It's written all over you." They might even offer a strangely flattering label. "You're a natural informant. You have a gift for observation. You see things other people miss." Whether the label is insulting or complimentary doesn't matter. What matters is that it's repeated, insisted upon, in an environment of total isolation and stress. The subject's own sense of self begins to blur at the edges. They start to see themselves through the interrogator's eyes. And once they start to believe the label, acting in accordance with it becomes the path of least psychological resistance. The coward breaks down. The thinker decides to intellectually separate himself from his cause. The informant starts to show off how much he knows. The interrogator didn't just break the door down. They handed the subject a key and convinced them it was their idea to open it all along. Every good salesperson knows this trick. They don't ask, "Do you want to buy this car?" They ask, "Do you want it in blue or red?" They don't ask, "Are you signing up today?" They ask, "Will that be the standard or the premium membership?" In both cases, your brain skips past the big question, the if, and jumps directly to the smaller question, the how. Either choice you make results in a sale. This is the double bind or the forced choice, and it's a beautifully simple way to corner a mind. For an interrogator, this tactic is golden. They rarely ask, "Are you going to cooperate?" That's a yes or no question, and no is a very easy answer. Instead, they frame the question to presuppose guilt and force engagement. For instance, "Are we going to talk about the location of the safe house, or should we start with the names of the people who were there?" Notice the trick. Both options suck. Both options assume the subject has the information. The subject's brain, under immense stress, automatically starts weighing the two terrible options against each other. Which is worse, giving up a place or giving up people? In that split second of calculation, the game is almost lost. The subject has mentally moved from a position of defiance, "I will say nothing," to one of negotiation. How do I minimize the damage? It gives them a fragile illusion of control over the process. They feel like they are making a decision, steering the conversation. But all they're really doing is choosing the path of their own surrender. The interrogator might ask, "Do you want to write down your statement, or should we just record it orally? It's up to you." The "up to you" part is the masterstroke. It feels collaborative, but the statement is happening either way. It's a psychological sleight of hand. While you're busy trying to figure out which card to pick, you don't notice that the entire deck is stacked against you. Everything we've talked about, the isolation, the timelessness, the conformity, the weaponized hope, the forced choices, they aren't just a collection of dirty tricks. They are ingredients. They are steps in a recipe designed to achieve one ultimate, terrifying goal: to make a grown adult's brain forget it's an adult. This is the principle of psychological regression. Under conditions of extreme, prolonged stress, dependency, and fear, the complex, rational, adult parts of our personality can simply shut down. And when they do, the mind reverts to the most fundamental and powerful relationship dynamic it has ever known, that of a helpless child to an all-powerful parent. This is the endgame the KUBARK manual is building towards. It's a blueprint for systematically dismantling a person's adult identity. Think about it. The subject is isolated from their peers, their adult support network. Their control over their own schedule is gone, no adult autonomy. They are entirely dependent on one person for their basic needs: food, water, comfort, Sensory input, human contact. This perfectly mimics the condition of an infant. In this state, the interrogator ceases to be just a man in a room. By controlling every aspect of the subject's world, they subconsciously become the authority figure, the provider, the parent. The subject, in turn, is forced into the role of the child. And what does a child want more than anything? They crave the approval of the parent figure and are terrified of their disapproval or abandonment. This is the psychological checkmate. When a subject has regressed to this point, their complex adult motivations like patriotism, duty, loyalty, and honor are sidelined. Their mind is now running on a much more primal operating system. Their primary drive is no longer to protect the mission. It's to please the authority figure to get a reward, a kind word, a cup of coffee, or to avoid punishment, a sharp tone, the withdrawal of attention. The most sophisticated and disturbing technique the CIA ever perfected wasn't a truth serum or a machine. It was a process. A process for turning a soldier, a spy, or an ideologue back into a terrified child, looking up at a new parent and willing to do anything just to be told they are a good boy. So there you have it, more proof that your brain is actively trying to trick you and that some people have the instruction manual. If you want to find out what other shenanigans it's up to, make sure you're subscribed for the next video.